Joseph, take one.
You're listening to KBOO 90.7 FM.
When I'm in Portland, from KBOO. Check it for 90.7 KBOO for real.
KBOO versus the media.
KBOO, listener-sponsored radio.
Please tell us your name, introduce yourself, and tell a bit about who you are outside of KBOO.
Yeah, my name's Joseph Gallivan. I do art focus on KBOO, and I produce and present it. So I find the guests, and I do the interviews, and I edit and send in the audio. Art Focus is every 2 weeks. It's a half-hour interview show with visual artists and curators. So we look at Portland area artists, usually talk about their work, what inspires them, how they made it. It's the usual kind of artist's statement about their work, and they get to have a conversation and relax. There used to be a lot more art coverage in Portland, you know, the Oregonian and all the weeklies, and you know, OPB, television. There's less than there was, you know. There's very few reviews of shows. So what I like about the coverage there's art and about, there's Arts Watch, you know, there's Oregon Art Beat. You know, there is some coverage, and I just think if you're interested in art, you should listen to Art Focus, because you'll get a personalized view of what's going on in the art world in Portland and Oregon. I started it because the then host, Ava Lake, who's an artist still in Portland, wanted someone to cover for her for a week. So I stepped in, and then 13 years later, here I am still doing it. I did it with Ava. We used to alternate, and then I worked with Andre Middleton, who now does Friends of Noise, the all ages venue musical organization. And originally it began with a woman called Julie Bernard. I think it was in the 80s. And I think the first guests ever were Tom Kramer, who's an artist still going, and someone called Marco Polo, who I don't know. And it's been Julie was very consistent. She did it for a couple of decades. And then I've been pretty much on my own for the last 6 or 7 years. We used to get submissions by snail mail, but the snail mail cupboard is empty these days. I usually go to First Thursday and talk to the gallery owners, and they tell me what's coming up in the next few months. And I don't try and limit myself to the 9th Avenue, you know, Pearl District gallery scene. I try and go to other galleries. I try and cover other subjects like timbers, tifos, you know, the big banner displays, people who do cartoons. A guy made a deck of cards based on strippers. You know, it's like, it's art, but it's tried to be a bit more broad than just gallery art. I was unemployed, and I volunteered in the news department, so I was writing the news, which was just going through Google News and putting a star next to interesting stories that would appeal to KBOO listeners, and then rewriting that story for radio. And I did that, I think, for about a year, and then that's when I heard from Ava. I'd done a tiny bit of radio in England for the BBC, so I think people just assumed I could do radio, you know. And then I started working with Ava because I'm a journalist by trade, and I cover the arts at the Portland Tribune, so it was just sort of a natural fit. And then I actually took all the KBOO trainings, which were incredibly valuable. One of the things I love about KBOO is how it's trained so many people who've either gone on to professional radio or done whatever they do, you know, podcasts, or just become more critical in their thinking. And I think this is like sort of ground zero for getting into spoken word media, I think. One of the things I love about having artists on is that they usually work in isolation, and they work for a long time to build up to a show. It's this big moment, but on my show they get to talk about the work, and usually we're standing in front of it in a gallery, so I do a field recording. Sometimes I go see the work, and then we'll do a Zoom later if we can't connect. But I just love hearing artists explain their work, talk about their methods, and tell us what it feels like to be an artist, because it is still a kind of a special occupation. I know they usually have their own day jobs, but this is their passion, and it's good to hear them speak about it. I first discovered KBOO when I moved here from England in 1994, and there was a show on in the middle of the night that just played crazy sounds, and I can't remember what it was called, but I think it's still going. But I just thought, wow, what a great station that will just play the most sort of weird avant-garde music, and then it got me listening to it the rest of the time, and I just love how it changes every hour or two. It's diverse in the old sense of the word, meaning it covers everyone, and it's just very individual. I like that all the DJs kind of do their own thing. They're not necessarily institutionalized, they come and go, they send their music in from the ether, or like me, I send my interviews in from home now. So I think it gives you a very broad, there are very diverse flavors to what you hear on the radio, whether it's talk or music. And I like that it's, scrappy non-profit that is not going to be pushed around by a corporation, as far as I can tell. I had a guest on who runs the gallery at Clackamas Community College in Oregon City. Her name is Kate Simmons, and she's an academic, and she had her own show, and it was about domestic life, like having kids, doing laundry, all this stuff. And she also had these pictures of herself totally naked, like printed up on fabric. And I thought, wow, how incredibly sort of relaxed to present yourself like that. But when she came in for the interview, she was incredibly nervous. And it was nerves about being on the radio, it was nerves about media, about how intimidating it is to see microphones and stuff. And I kind of put her at her ease, and at the end she said, "Oh, thanks, I really forgot how nervous I was after a few minutes of talking about my art." And it just made me realize that, someone could be out there in the world really sort of comfortable in one area, but intimidated or nervous especially under the lights, under the media spotlight. And I thought the fact that I could make her relax was kind of a skill. But that makes me wonder, like today, everyone is used to broadcasting themselves. We're all our own little media producer. But how much of that nervousness remains, like when we go up against an institutional media, something that's bigger than us and has more power, more wattage, more fancy equipment. I think it's because, all news is local, and what goes on in our little corner of Oregon is probably, more interesting to us than things that go on outside of Oregon. And that's what KBOO does really well. It finds the local people who have interesting things to say and gives them a voice, and they still have call-in shows and things like that, and that's really good. It kind of gives you a feel for who else is living here. I like that. I mean, community radio, I presume it means non-profit, not owned by a corporation, and often staffed by volunteers, so people who really care about what they're doing. So that's to me what KBOO is, and I hope it keeps going for like another 50 years. I think if 10% KBOO's money is now going away. Obviously, we'll have to replace that with 10% money from somewhere else. One thing I'd like is if people would give money to KBOO the way they give for other media like Netflix or Spotify, you know, $15 a month or 20 in some cases. You know, really KBOO is there, and it's local and it's accessible and it's more relevant. You know, and the good thing is you don't have to hunt through a bunch of menus to get the content. You turn it on, that's what you get. It's kind of in your face like that. It's always on in my car, and I put it on Alexa too. So I think converting listeners into subscribers is probably the biggest goal to survive this kind of attack on you know, public media. I also hope people will bookmark and tune their car radio, if they still use one, to KBOO, and tell their friends, you know, that, oh yeah, I'm still listening to this old hippie station and it's still going and it's still really interesting and it's better than a lot of stuff that's out there. I think people should support KBOO because it's one more flavor of media out there, but it's local and it's non-profit, so it's not, you know, it's not just done for money, it's really done for passion. And where else are you going to find that these days?